involved is Meghan Markle in her own podcast? Hello everyone, welcome to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany, and today we're going to be talking about the indications that perhaps Meghan Markle is not as involved in her own podcast as she would like us to believe. Specifically, that she's not interviewing the experts that she's using audio clips from, and that in fact, those interviews have all been done by her producers in one form or another. And that really perhaps at the end of the day, the only thing she cares about, the only thing that she's interested in doing is the voiceover, which is very overdramatic. We have the long breathy pauses, what some people consider a dark room sexy style voice. And then the celebrities, that she seems to be only interested in chatting with the celebrities. If she has to talk to a PhD person, it's like, no, I'm just gonna let a producer do that. Now, while this may be some speculation, I don't think it's that far from the truth. And we're just gonna chat a little bit about that today. But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, like I said, my name is Brittany, and on this channel I provide compelling royal commentary and news and a little bit of gossip too. So if you guys want to subscribe, that would be awesome. In addition, I will be reviewing television shows and movies and sharing a bit of history too. And I would love to have you back because we have so much fun with royals on this channel. And in addition, I also have a fashion channel. So if you want to know or have a bit of discussion about what Catherine and Camilla will be wearing for tiaras next week, because we had the South African visit, I'm planning on doing a live stream that Tuesday discussing what tiaras we may or may not see. And I already have a video explaining some of the fun options. I would be really excited if Catherine and Camilla would bust out of the vaults, because we haven't seen them in tiaras in over 2 years. I also have a trip to England planned, and I'll put a link in the description box down below. And before we get started, I will say real quick, Catherine did a wonderful engagement today. She went to the Ukrainian Community Center in Reading, which is her hometown, basically in the UK. And so she also got thanked by the Ukrainian First Lady for going there and spending some time with the children and the families. And so it was really fantastic to see her there and just enjoying her time, because I know she really loves children. And she gave a little nod to Ukraine with her dress. So it was a navy blue with some yellow polka dots. So I thought that was lovely. In addition, it really does sound like that Harry and Meghan's reality TV show will come out in December. So People magazine has said this, and a couple others are indicating this as well. So it sounds like really it is going to come to the forefront. And I do plan on doing a whole video of the debacle where apparently Harry and Meghan kicked out their first reality TV show director, who was also a well-acclaimed director, but didn't fit their specifications for whatever reason. Nobody knows. Because they seem, even the director they don't like her work, because Meghan already said, I mean, it's not what we would do. So if I was Netflix, I'd already be extremely frustrated. And I think Spotify would be as well, because I don't think Archetypes is performing how they would like it to. They've put tens of millions of dollars apparently into a potential contract with them. We've heard upwards of 20-25 million. And Harry and Meghan, like everything, they generate a lot of noise because everybody is looking for the car crash mentality, but it's not really turning into revenue that way I think these companies really anticipated. So when it comes to Spotify, Meghan's series is currently ranked at number 24. And just to give you guys an indication, it's actually a green arrow, so it's actually gone up from where it was initially after her latest episode dropped. And when it comes to that episode itself, she currently is sitting at number 42, and that's a little bit of a raise. So it seems like every week that Meghan comes out with another podcast, people are both less interested and less invested in what she's talking about. And this is not a good look for Spotify, and I'm sure this is not what they want. In addition, they have at least one producer and one person who was interviewed explaining what's going on behind the scenes a bit. And to a certain extent, it doesn't sound like there's much that Meghan perhaps is doing, at least when it comes to certain guests.
Talk about this Hollywood Reporter article really quick because it made me big mad. I'm a podcast producer. If you don't know me, my name is Rebecca Sananes. I am the executive producer and creator of Archetypes, hosted by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. I produced Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. Kara Swisher is one of the people on this list. I want to talk about this list because the 40 most powerful people in podcasting are not executives, they're not celebrity hosts, and they're not talent agents. They are the producers. Producers edit, research, write, make scripts, make the sound good, score. Everything you love about your favorite podcast is because a producer made it. And producers are being undervalued, undercredited, and underpaid. And it's making the industry boring and slow.
So you heard that right. That was Meghan's producer talking about how she's doing the editing, the script writing, the research, writing questions. So the question becomes, well, then what is your talent doing? Are they just showing up and reading from a script and asking scripted questions that you've already written for them? That is something that definitely happens in the industry. I don't feel like those people are typically the ones that really grow, because for me at least, if I was doing a podcast and let's say I had a team, well, I would appreciate somebody who's done the research and given me some of the background support that I need. I would still be the one probably fastening the questions. I would say, hey, give me some of your questions. And I would, in addition, ask my own questions or maybe rewrite yours just to try and grow and build what is already been done to make sure that it is a reflection of me. And I would personally want to always interview everybody who's going to be on the podcast, because sometimes when you're interviewing somebody, it does add an additional layer. You know what more about them, you know more about their background, their history, and it can add another layer, especially when you can ask a question that you didn't initially anticipate. Whereas through a conversation, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that is a fantastic idea. Let me ask them that. And I have had instances like that where I throw out a popcorn question with somebody I've interviewed in the past, and they gave me actually a really fascinating answer that I was not anticipating in the slightest. But apparently that's not the philosophy Meghan goes by, because apparently she really hasn't interviewed one of her guests. So this is what the guest wrote on Instagram. She said, this is Allison Yarrow, excited to be included in the visionary series Archetypes hosted by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, that aims to dissect and subvert the archetypes that hold women back. The first episode, out now, link in bio, features a timely interview with another legend, Serena Williams. Cheers to producer Farah Sahari, an excellent interviewer, and the folks at Gimlet, Spotify, who get it done. Now, this was a post originally from August, around the time Archetypes first released. And so it's something that's been brought up that people have investigated. And I find it really fascinating that she has pointed this out, basically saying, hey, it's the team behind it that is the real effort here. It's a team behind it that's really crafting this whole podcast. And that doesn't surprise me, because I did a little research myself. I actually copied all the transcripts of Meghan's episodes. I'm so sorry, guys. I could not listen to any of those because it's like listening to like nails on a chalkboard. It's just listening to her try to interview somebody. It's bad. She's really not a great interviewer at this point. Perhaps she'll get better. She could get better. But at this point, I think she leaves a lot to be desired in this area. But what we see throughout these episodes, especially when she inserts the experts like Allison Yarrow, is that Meghan is talking around them. So she's not talking to them. You can tell by even looking through the transcript that most likely that person has been interviewed by somebody else, a producer, and then they went ahead and dropped that audio into the program. So here's an example, and we'll take Allison's. So this is what happens. So Meghan goes, she starts and says, and she was seen as, so she's talking about the Greek goddess Artemis. Oh my goodness, what is this episode from? I don't care enough to look. So she's talking about the Greek goddess Artemis, who was the goddess of the hunt. She used to travel with a pack of dogs, and she was seen as free, bold, wild, beautiful. And from there, to track down the rest of the history of this word, we called up journalist and author Allison Yarrow. And then Allison, epidemiologists believe that the word bitch kind of came out of this Greek insult that meant women were dogs in heat begging for men. And so then Meghan goes, Allison wrote a book, again, my edit on the word here, 90s BICTH, media, culture, and the failed promise of gender equality. And in it, she points towards the 90s as a time when a new sort of woman was emerging in the US, a more modern woman, if you will. So Allison then goes, the median age of marriage had hovered around 21 or 22 for about 100 years, and by the middle of the 90s, it had risen to 24 and then 25. And you can see through that, it's clear that Allison's interview, the questions that she was asked, she was never asked them by Meghan Markle. Instead, she was asked them by a producer. And then what the producer did is the producer spliced them together and fit them into Meghan's episode the way the producer thought they would work. And then they crafted a script for Meghan to read as if to a certain extent she is leaning on this person, which she really isn't, because it's the producer, the one trying to make this all work together. Now, this is all to say, Meghan could be deeply, deeply involved behind the scenes. This is just conjecture. This is just my initial thoughts. But I do find it really interesting that Allison, again, really praised the team, not Meghan, really. She praised the team around Meghan instead of Meghan herself. And I think it's clear that perhaps Meghan, again, as much as she promotes archetypes to death, she's really not all that involved in it. And it's actually the producers making sure things actually work together. And we see these instances throughout her whole series. I actually went through every single episode transcript and pulled out those bits where it's clear that the producer is pulling stuff for Meghan to react to. Now, why would I say this is a problem? They do this sometimes in the media, is that the producer interviews somebody instead of the actual journalist, the actual reporter, the actual commentator. That does completely happen. However, I would say that Meghan is missing a key factor in the podcast if she's not really doing this, and that is gathering more information. She's letting the producers talk to people that she thinks, you know what, they have this nice information, but I don't need to talk to them. They're not worthy of my time. Instead, I'm going to talk to the celebrity. The celebrity is what matters. The celebrity is who I want to talk to. I want to talk to these other peons. They're not worth my time. And I think subconsciously, or maybe even unconsciously, that's what she's saying, that the only people worthwhile to talk to in her mind are the celebrities that she's bringing into this program, because those are the only people she really has any desire to get any information from, any enlightening, and she wants to suck up to whoever that person happens to be. If she thinks that they may benefit her somewhere down the line, she admires them, there could be a whole host of reasons. But I feel like it makes Meghan look just a bit arrogant, I feel like, to believe that, well, I don't really need to talk to the small fry. They're not worthy of my time. Just tell me who the big people are and then give me the script so I can put my flair in it. And I can do the long breathy pauses, or I can do the she does this, every once in a while, like when she laughs, she's like, all of it sounds just so contrived and fake that you could just tell she's reading from a script that was not written by her. Now, granted, again, if you have a podcast like this, you need people to help you out. No doubt about it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that she doesn't need help, that she doesn't need assistance. What I am saying is that she seems to only care about the celebrities and not really the rest of the podcast, because this whole podcast is one gigantic ego trip. Meghan is using this podcast as a launching pad to complain about her time in the British monarchy. That's what she's doing. That's all this is about, is complaining about the Brits, the royals, how she wasn't accepted in her mind the way she wanted to be. So what has she done? She's created this podcast where she can just complain about everything and try to redirect the narrative by saying, oh no, I wasn't terrible to work with. I was just particular. I wasn't demanding, I was particular. And I don't think anybody's buying it, really. And I feel like these subtle things that are coming out, I mean, I'm still surprised Rebecca's little tirade on TikTok. means that she's still working with Meghan. Although I will say Rebecca's probably in the better place because she actually works at Spotify, not necessarily for for Archewell. So she's perhaps better protected, but it's really not a great look for you as a producer to go, well, I do everything. And I guess the famous person just shows up. And I'm sure in some cases that is the case, but I know I've watched the recorded screenings of, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. He played Lex Luthor on Smallville. So he does interviews with other celebrities. And you can tell, I'm sure some people have helped him out and things, but he'll sit down there and he'll talk with them for an hour. And I always feel like it's weird when Meghan first starts out with somebody. She's like, are you there? Oh, look, hi, hello. That stuff doesn't need to be in there. Cut that out. That's extraneous. We don't need to hear your initial, oh my gosh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Good. That was a commercial in the United States for Verizon, or T-Mobile. I think it was T-Mobile. The guy would have his earphone. Can you hear me now? Good. That's what I feel like they always start off with. Can you hear me? And so it just makes, I feel like, it'll look not as polished as it should. And I feel like because Meghan is not really all that involved in curating the information and the content that goes into the podcast, that's why I feel like overproduced, because the producers are compensating for Meghan's lack of involvement, or for Meghan's just not wanting to really deal with anybody who isn't connected directly with Hollywood. And so she makes her producers do that. And the producer's like, well, let's explore this idea. Let's explore that idea. And she's like, I mean, I'm sure she has a very direct line of communication as well, because she's very demanding in particular, but I could also see her being very flaky too. What I mean by that is she has this idea and yet can't help you bring it to reality. She just wants you to do that. We saw this a bit in the royal family too. So when her initial personal assistant quit, one of the stories that came out is that Meghan had ordered one of these blankets ordered with their names embroidered on them. And this woman ordered these blankets, I'm sure, as a professional going, well, I need to order these blankets. My boss wants these blankets. Well, the blankets weren't the thread color of red, wasn't the right red. So Meghan told her, order these blankets, order red trim, or red embroidery. So this woman ordered these blankets, ordered the red embroidery, but the explosion that went off when they weren't the right red. So this could be a sense too where there's a lot of just stress and tension trying to get these episodes together, because while Meghan gives directions, if they're not exactly specific to what her vision is, I'm sure they hear the riot act from her. In addition, again, I bet you she's not specific enough. So if they don't do it perfectly right, she gets mad, even though she probably never gave them all the information they needed to begin with. So what can we glean from this? I think there's a couple things. One, I think things are probably fraught behind the scenes. I'm sure the producers are somewhat frustrated that their contributions aren't being publicly acknowledged, nor is all their effort really being perhaps appreciated by Meghan, who's going on this binge publicity tour from The Cut to Variety. And it's all about this podcast, perhaps and herself, but not as much about the team behind her really helping her. I always appreciate how people acknowledge, hey, it's this thing that I've come together, it's been a lot of effort. I'm just one small part of a larger cog in the machine. I don't feel like Meghan's that person. Two, I imagine that the producers are doing a lot more heavy lifting perhaps than they would like to, because if she's not contributing as much in terms of the background and what she wants to talk about, besides fueling her own ego, I bet you, much like Napoleon Bonaparte in his painting, The Coronation of Napoleon, he really originally wanted it to show him crowning himself. And the painter's like, buddy, no, we can't totally do that. So what we're going to do instead is making it look like you're crowning your wife Josephine, even though she already has a tiara on her head. So it kind of looks like you're being crowned too. That was a compromise they came up with. And I'm sure for Meghan, it's a bit like that as well. So much like the artist, I'm sure they're recognizing that Meghan wants to pull all the attention and focus to herself and her own plight. And so they have to rather force her in a way to go, okay, no, we need to bring in these experts. We need to change this up so it doesn't really sound like an entire griping session about the words you believed that were described by you in the media and how you're trying to push against them all the time. They're trying to rein her in. And I'm sure that to some extent is a bit hard and I'm sure a bit tense. In addition, I can imagine as a producer, it would be frustrating if the person that you're helping and guiding through this process really hasn't done any of the work behind the scenes. I'm sure perhaps this happens much more than I would like to believe, because I would like to believe that most people at least have done some of their own research, have contributed and created some of their own questions for these podcasts. And so they're not just simply relying on their producers to do everything. I'm sure there are those, but I feel like those will not go as far if you don't have somebody fully invested in the topic, fully invested in trying to make this work. So you're constantly battling against yourself in a way, because you cannot get it fully to come together, because it's frustrating when you have somebody who's not in there all 100% of the time, that doesn't really want to do as much as you are doing, and you've done all this work, for example, and they just throw it out and go, no, I don't want that. Because I could totally, again, see Meghan doing that. Finally, I will say, Meghan is missing out on not talking to the experts. If she isn't, I think that shows that all she wants to do is talk to the celebrities that probably wouldn't have talked to her if she was just simply Meghan Markle and not the Duchess of Sussex. And that, I feel like, diminishes her podcast, because you do learn something talking to other people. You learn something about their lives, their history, their heritage, their family, how they came to certain things, and you can ask questions perhaps that you didn't think of asking before. And perhaps if Meghan had a vision for what that particular episode was going to be like, she could help them splice something together themselves. But it feels so overproduced, so overwrought, that it's hard to imagine that she really has all that much effort behind it. Because while this is an attempt for her to, she believes, reframe her public image, I think she's finding it perhaps more difficult than she initially thought, and that this is not going as well as she thought it would. She thought everybody would just roll over and would just be so excited to hear from Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. But as time goes on, when it's really just an entire vanity project for you, people aren't that interested. And so at the end of the day, what might happen? The producers aren't that interested. And ergo, your show just contracts all the time. So it would be interesting to see if I'm right or not. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think Meghan is fully invested in her podcast, or is it just one huge vanity project that she'll immediately drop once she's had an opportunity to address all the words that she feels like people called her while she was a royal and beyond? Well, guys, let me know what you think, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Bye.